this session, we're going to look at how we calculate inheritance tax at death on the death estate. Now, what we do is we will add up the value of all of the deceased person's assets, all of them, at the date of death. We will then deduct any liabilities that person had at the date of death, so any loans, any income tax that's due, any capital gains tax that was due. We can also deduct reasonable funeral expenses, as well as exempt legacies. Now, what we mean by exempt legacies is where the deceased person has left money to their spouse or civil partner, to a political party, or to museums or art galleries. The amount that we have left is known as the gross chargeable estate, and if we have any nil rate band remaining, and that's after we take into account any chargeable lifetime transfers or potential exempt transfers within 7 years prior to the date of death are taken into account, well, that remaining part will be taxed at 0%, and any amount that isn't covered by that nil rate band is taxed at 40%. So let's have a look at an illustration. We have Sid, who died on the 31st of March 2017, and at that date he had a variety of assets and liabilities: a house, shares, bank, chattels. He owed a credit card company some money, as well as some income tax. Now, Sid left his house and his bank balances to Nancy, his wife. The remainder of his estate was left to his children. And we're also told that Sid had previously made gross chargeable transfers in the 7 years prior to his death, totaling £175,000. Finally, his funeral expenses were £8,000. So let's calculate the inheritance tax on his death estate. So we'll start by adding up all of the assets and deducting any liabilities. We can then deduct funeral expenses. £8,000 would certainly be reasonable, so we've got a total of £649,000. Next, we can consider exempt legacies, and the exempt legacies were the house and bank balances. So in total, those had a value of £446,000. So we'll deduct that from the total to leave us with a gross chargeable estate of £203,000, and we can now calculate how much inheritance tax is chargeable on that £203,000. So let's now calculate the inheritance tax on the death estate. We have a gross chargeable estate of £203,000. What we'll do first is work out how much of the nil rate band is left unused. The nil rate band, of course, is £325,000, and we're told in the scenario that gross chargeable transfers in the 7 years up to the date of death were £175,000. That leaves £150,000 left that will be used against the death estate. So the first £150,000 will be taxed at 0%. The remainder of the estate, that's £53,000, will be taxed at 40%, and that works out at £21,200, and that's the total inheritance tax that's payable. So who will pay this inheritance tax on the death estate? Well, it will be paid by the executors who are dealing with the estate. The executors, they are the administrators of a deceased person's assets. They will make sure that all liabilities are paid and any remaining assets are distributed in accordance with the wishes laid out in an individual's will. So the inheritance tax will actually come out of the money or assets left in the estate after any specific legacies have been paid.